Hey everyone, I want to thank everyone for the massive response I've had from the last video. If you go through and read the comments, you'll see there's a lot of trolls trying to attack what I've done. I mean, people can sort of see that in whichever way they wished, but any logical mind that performs with any logic, any reasoning, any sense, can see that what they're doing is effectively they're still trying to shut us down. I mean, that is really a positive thing from our point of view, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to dissuade, trying to disorient people, trying to move people on, trying to basically cover up what really is going on. I've set the same transformer up as in the last video. I've opened it up a little bit carefully, and we can see the same basic transformer. Now, in any conventional transformer, anyone that's done a little bit of research knows that there's symmetry between the transformer primary and between the transformer secondary. What I mean by symmetry is the ampere turns between the primary coil and the secondary coil are the same. So ampere turns are amps multiplied by turns. So if we had 10 amps through say 200 turns, okay, so 10 times 200, 2000. So we have 2000 ampere turns. Now on the secondary, we'd have 2000 ampere turns minus the losses. So there's always losses in any system, there's always losses. So this is symmetry. And the symmetry basically means that the magnetic field between the primary coil and the secondary coil is equivalent, but on the secondary we have losses. And the losses mean that the secondary coil is not quite symmetrical with the primary coil. It's symmetrical enough to call it symmetrical, but it's not symmetrical enough to be precisely accurate. Okay, and that's really what this is about. Now, say for example, okay, let me get a bit of perspective here. I'll move around my bench, bush bench. Say for example we had 200 turns on here. I know in the last video I said probably 250 or so. Say for example, for the sake of reasoning, we got 200 turns. Say for example we're putting 10 amps through it. So 10 times 200 equals 2000. This coil over here would have a much lower voltage because there's less turns on it, but it'd have a much higher current. Okay, so the ampere turns would be 2000, the same as the primary coil, but this coil over here would have losses. Okay, so the primary coil always overcomes the secondary coil in a conventional transformer, and the overcoming of the secondary coil, so the primary coil over here overcoming the magnetic force on the secondary coil is the BH curve. The magnetizing current on the primary coil versus the voltage gained and current on the secondary coil, you can show via a very simple circuit the BH curve in the core. Okay. Now the magnetizing current from the primary coil pushes the core through its hysteresis curve. Okay. And the hysteresis curve in the core is directly responsible, or is directly coupled to the magnetic field. So the magnetic field changing in time in the core is what generates the voltage on this coil over here, on the secondary coil. Now when the secondary coil is loaded, the current opposes the primary. Lenz's law. So there's always the negative in d phi dt. The negative sign in Faraday's law is Lenz's law. Now technically Lenz's law is voltage and not current. Okay, so it's confused. it's a very, very cloudy area to investigate, but technically Lenz's law is voltage and not current. Okay, the current directly opposes 180 degrees out of phase. Now, ampere turns, this is symmetrical. So the opposition of magnetic field from the primary coil is the secondary coil. Okay, the force in the system is the opposition. Okay, so when we talk about work done, when we talk about force or energy or work or anything like that, it is the work that's opposed to the primary coil. So always the secondary coil opposes the primary coil. Now, most people know the basics of a transformer, but if you read a textbook, the textbook will never ever tell you that the currents directly oppose primary and secondary. Okay, they always show you the primary coil current, they always show you the primary magnetic field, but very, very, very rarely, if even at all, do they show you the secondary current. Okay, secondary current is a source of energy that's completely ignored right throughout science. How can I say this? Any change in magnetic field over time is energy. Okay, Richard Feynman even said it in some of his lectures. A moving magnetic field creates an electric field. Okay, they're both the same things, just from a different viewpoint. Floyd Sweet said the same thing. He said, move along with the charge, what do you see? Magnetic field. So this is something that that I really want to sort of cover in great detail so that people can actually see the truth, see what really is going on, and see that these people that are trolling us, these people that come tell us that, you know, there's nothing there, it's all a load of hoo-ha, you've got nothing, all that sort of thing, those people are doing what they're doing for a reason. They've got no idea how the technology works, but they've been either paid to come and distract, or they're basically just not smart enough to work it out. So again, primary coil was always opposed by the secondary coil. Now, that is directly what we refer to as symmetry. Okay, science just loves symmetry. Symmetry is part of science. It's always been part of science. But what has been missed is symmetry's counterpart, which is asymmetry. Okay, I don't know how quite to put this so that it makes sense for people. But what I want to say is really important, and it's perhaps the most important part of this video. Now, I've covered in other videos before how partnered output coils, they must be in magnetic resonance. Magnetic resonance, the definition, currents 180 degrees out of phase, equal and opposite, equal in magnitude, opposite in vector direction. So what I'm saying is the magnetic field between partnered output coil 1 and partnered output coil 2 must oppose the same as what a conventional transformer between the primary and secondary. So effectively what I'm saying, and I really want people to understand this, effectively what I'm saying is the energy, power over time, the energy in each partnered output coil must be the same, must be symmetrical. The input coil being a third coil, being a third magnetic field, if you want to deem or define the magnetic fields in that way, because they can be defined anyway. The third magnetic field from the input coil, which is not shown here, is the asymmetry. Now the input coil basically excites the partnered output coils into their resonance. Really, there's really very little to no energy that's expended on the input coil when in resonance. If you're not in resonance, then the input coil will use plenty of energy in the form of watts, basically to move your core through your hysteresis curve. Now, symmetry is really important, but to break symmetry, you've got to introduce something that imbalances the symmetry. Now, again, the partnered output coils, partnered output coil 1, partnered output coil 2, just following the transformer, okay, so primary, secondary, so partnered output coil 1, partnered output coil 2, oppose each other. They must oppose each other, okay? There's no getting around it. If you don't have magnetic field opposition using the right hand grip rule, okay, conventional current flowing from positive to negative, conventional current using the right hand grip rule, okay, so you grip like that, thumb points in the direction of the magnetic field, the north pole, okay, so north pole that way, field opposition in the middle, so each coil oppose each other, the same, exactly the same as in a conventional transformer. There's no difference, okay? So we could say partnered output coil 2, partnered output coil 1, ampere turns equal and opposite. So that's magnetic resonance. Now the source of energy, the source of charge it's a volumetric quantity. So it's volumetric in the fashion that it's the voltage times the current over time. Now, when these machines are set up right, when they're set up correctly, the voltage and the current are in phase. There's no phase difference. So you don't need to worry about phase angles and all that sort of thing, because the phase is exactly in phase. It's real power, okay, active power, true power. There's no phase angle difference, no nothing. The time rate of change of the magnetic field on partnered output coil 1 generates a voltage on partnered output coil 2. Now, because it's in resonance, the phase angle is basically 180 degrees on the current between each coil, which basically means that each coil works in unison. So each coil generates its partner's voltage, and because the magnetic fields oppose, we can pump current as long as we have opposition of magnetic fields. Now, I've said it in lots of other videos before, current comes from stress on the coil, okay, pressure. Current comes from the atom, okay, charge is the electrons in the orbitals of the atom of the copper wire. If you want that charge to move, you've got to bring that charge up to higher orbitals, you've got to pump the charge, you've got to accelerate the electrons, okay, and the only way to do that is via magnetic fields. Now, changing magnetic fields also mean that there's an electric field in there. So there is an electric field when there's changing magnetic fields. That's something that Floyd Sweet said in his paper, Nothing is Something. He mentions that in a toroid, when it's correctly wound, that there's a surging electric field around the transformer. Okay, that's what we've sort of focused on. Magnetic fields are just the electric field from a different viewpoint. They're all part of the same package, if you like. Okay, so there's symmetry between partnered output coils. The asymmetry comes from an exciting coil that brings the frequency and starts the charge moving in the coils. Okay? If you notice, in history there's always been coils, capacitors in most machines. Most machines throughout history have always been comprised of coils, capacitors, and not a lot else. There's other ways to do it, but there's very, very few ways to do it simply and cost effectively. This is cost effective. I mean, for a few $100s you could build a pretty simple transformer that you could move to an asymmetrical state, and basically that asymmetrical state will give you excess energy once you get the machine running right. Now, there's all sorts of people out there that run off down all these rabbit holes all the time, claiming to be professionals, claiming that they know everything, claiming they've got running devices, but none of them have independent replication. None of them have experiments to show you the right direction. None of them have any information of value at all. We're the only people on the whole internet that does. Okay? There's other people out there that will mislead you till the cows come home. There's people out there that say, oh yeah, we've got the technology coming, it's coming, it's coming. But you know what? In 6 months' time, they tell you the same thing. Yeah, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And then another 12 months' time, yeah, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, but it never happens. Okay? It's up to you to do it for yourself. And it's up to you to see what really is happening. Okay? The atom, the source charge is the key. Source charge is the basic standard electron. Okay? In a typical situation, it has a mass, it has a charge, it has a magnetic field, and when that moves with a specific volume over a specific time, it's considered energy. Okay, it's like a train running down its track. Okay, when the engine's not going, the train's not going to move. You've got to get the engine going. If you want to power a load, you've got to have a voltage multiplied by a current, and then in some situations there might be a phase angle, so you might have to do a cos theta in there, theta being the phase angle for power correction. But in these machines, when you get them running properly, there is no phase angle. It's real power, real energy. Okay, power over time is energy, joules. So I want to stress, this transformer is a large transformer. We're looking roughly maybe about 120 by, let's say, what, 60, 70. So if you wanted to work out the cross-sectional area on that, it's 120 by multiplied by, let's say, 60 for convenience. It's probably a little bit more than 60. So length times width equals area, or at least the cross-sectional area. This is a large transformer. Now with large transformers, you have the ability to use much less turns of thicker wire, whereas with a smaller transformer, obviously you're bound by turn size, wire size, all that sort of thing. So there's an advantage to using slightly bigger transformers. Now, I want to stress at this stage, the average transformer, if it's a CI core like this particular transformer, you may need a gap, a very, very small gap. Okay, the reason for that is that the core itself can hang on to the magnetic field, called residual magnetic field, which means that the magnetic field in the core itself may not change as much as what you may think it will. In other words, the core is magnetized in one direction, and that magnetization will stay even when the coil has been switched off. Okay, so again, I want to stress, magnetic fields the ampere turns in partner output coils need to be symmetrical. They need to be equivalent, less losses. Now basically all you need to do is just add or remove turns, okay, to make them equivalent. Remembering the current's 180 degrees out of phase. The time rate of change on this coil, on partner output coil 1, determines the voltage on partner output coil 2. Okay. There's a couple of calculators online. We actually gave one away for free that will work out your magnetic field, okay, which is B equals mu L Li, I think it is, something like that anyway, I forget off the top of my head. But you can calculate the magnetic field, and from that magnetic field changing over time, which basically is the current moving through the coil, which is dependent on your load, okay. I want to stress again, I've said this many times in the past, these partner output coils must be loaded at all times. If there's no load, the machine will not work, okay. Partner output coils must be loaded at all times. Basically the current changing in time is the magnetic field changing in time, and without a magnetic field changing in time, these coils don't work, okay. Now again, I want to repeat, the secondary coil in a transformer, okay, so this one in this case, in this particular transformer, this coil over here has a magnetic field changing in time, which is a source of energy which is not used by conventional science. Okay, so this coil over here has a source of energy that is thrown away, which the primary, in this case, the primary coil here is directly opposed by the secondary magnetic field. Now there's no real law or no real equation that shows you the force in here directly, at least anyway. It can be calculated separately. But if you were to go through transformer theory never really states anything about the opposition of magnetic fields, never really states anything about the secondary magnetic field. It never really states anything at all about magnetic fields opposing each other in a core. Now I want to state, basically in this situation I showed you before, the keeper here in the middle, it slides in and out. Now the primary coil here can be shorted through this inner loop, okay, so shorted through here so that the primary coil here has no, or has very little, magnetic field changing in time that passes through the secondary. So that should give you a bit of an idea on how an arc welder uses a magnetic keeper to change the transformer efficiency, should we say, basically the magnetic field coupling between this coil and that coil. Okay, now remembering they oppose, so there's always an opposition. So any current that's actually well, generated, current is not really generated, voltage is generated, but any current that flows in the secondary coil will also have a short circuit to a certain degree in the second loop over here through the keeper. So if the keeper's in, we've actually got two magnetic fields that are partially shorted through this middle keeper, and they're both in the same direction. So at any one point in time, let's say there's a north pole coming from the secondary, north pole coming from the primary, they meet in the middle and they both short circuit through each, which would be a figure 8 because of the keeper, but they're short circuited through that keeper in the middle of the transformer. And that lowers the efficiency of the transformer, lowers the flux that's exposed to the coil, lowers the magnetic A vector potential that's exposed to the coils, and creates a magnetic short circuit. You don't need a keeper, okay? Again, I just want to say in the situation of partnered output coils, you don't need a keeper. Okay, what you do need is you need current flowing in each coil. It must be in resonance. The basic definition of resonance, you could sort of think of resonance again as a highly tuned inductive circuit between two inductors, where the two inductors are 180 degrees out of phase at their most efficient operating point. And what I mean by most efficient is that because they are equal and opposite, because the magnetic force from this coil is equal and opposite to the magnetic force on this coil, they each generate an EMF in each coil which is sufficient to produce the voltage and then therefore the current. Now, without magnetic field opposition, there's much less current. Okay, so again, if we were to use a keeper to short circuit the magnetic field, then there's much less voltage and therefore much less current. I don't know how many times I can explain this in different ways, but basically partnered output coils, the best analogy for partnered output coils is a generator. One partnered output coil being the stator, one partnered output coil being the rotor. Stationary, but the analogy of motion, because the shaft rotates in a normal generator, the analogy of motion comes from the primary coil. So in partnered output coils we have three coils. The primary input coil gives us a frequency and a magnetic field which brings the secondary coils, partnered output coils, into magnetic resonance, the same as what a generator would. So we need to generate voltage, and the current comes from magnetic field opposition. Okay, and again, there's no equation for that. There's nothing out there in Faraday's law, there's nothing out there in Lenz's law that tell you or show you anything to do with the current. Current comes from Ohm's law, I equals V over R. Now, for example, if we were to generate, let's say 100 volts in each coil, and if we were instantly to short circuit the magnetic field, the 100 volts would have almost no current in it because the magnetic fields no longer oppose. If the magnetic fields oppose, then we get maximum current, and the current will pump for as long as the magnetic fields oppose. So if we had, let's say we had 1 second of input to the coils, the voltage would go up to 100 volts, and let's say we had 10 minutes of magnetic field opposition, then we'd have a decay over 10 minutes of current output from the coils with only 1 minute of input. Remember, power is basically volts times amps over time. Sorry, not time. Power is energy is over time. Sorry about that, confusing there. So again, voltage times current equals power, and then to convert that to energy we need to convert over time. Okay, so power over time equals energy, which is watts. Now this is a really important statement, you won't hear this anywhere else. A gain in energy is in the time domain. So if you want to gain energy, you need work in the system that is greater over time from the output coils is what it is on the input coil. Okay, so a gain in energy means in time there's more work being done by the output coils than what there is by the input coil. You're still going to use some energy. So on the input, you're still going to use some energy. In some situations, all the energy can be returned, and sometimes even a little bit more. So you've got to have some energy going into the coil, into the input coil. Now when the machine's running properly, that energy will come back out, and sometimes you can have a little bit more. So you get energy on the output coils, plus you get energy out on the input coil after you've put energy in. So again, I want to stress the last video, great response. Thank you everybody. Sounds like our little road out here has been a bit busy today. We've got someone moving in or moving out down the road by the looks. So I want to thank everybody again. I just want to say there's lots of red herrings, there's lots of baited traps, honey traps, whatever you want to call them. I urge everybody out there, look at the facts, look at who's doing what, look at their reputation, look at what they've contributed to the community over time. Now I want to say there's a lot of people out there, there's a good 50 or 60 people out there that I could say names, but I'm not going to, that have been around in the community for a long time. Over that period, they've done nothing but distract, destroy, basically just write everything off with no evidence whatsoever. There's a lot of people out there that just talk absolute lies and rubbish, and they don't know anything. They don't know, they've never done an experiment in their life, yet they're ready and willing to write off every single person that comes to the table with something. Now, I'm not saying every machine out there works, but ours does. Our machines work, okay? We've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of independent replications. Some of our team have self-running machines, yes they do. Some of our team are so far ahead you just would not believe how far ahead they really are. I urge people, if you want to power a load, learn how a generator works, learn how a transformer works, and expand on that technology just a little bit, because you know what? It was stopped just before humanity got to the point where self-powering machines were commonplace. Okay? This machine right here that you're looking at, with maybe an hour's work, a little bit of changing of the coils, this transformer right here could become a self-powered machine. Look at history, look at what people have been told. Remember, I use the black box scenario. Okay, so imagine any machine, any device that you see as a black box. On the output terminals, you always have voltage, you always have current. It's a measurable artifact, and it doesn't mean that there's anything mystical, or there's absolutely no voodoo science to voltage and current. Okay, stick with the basics, because some of this nonsense that you hear about negative energy and cold energy and radiant energy, all energy is radiant. All energy radiates. Okay, all energy fits into these categories. But you know what? What comes out of a transformer, what comes out of a generator, the only reason we can't make these machines run themselves is because we rely on symmetry. You've got to focus on breaking that symmetry. You've got to focus on making your input coil not directly oppose the output coils. Okay, remember what I said in the last video. In partnered output coils, we have partnered output coil 1, partnered output coil 2, not shown in this transformer is the primary coil. Okay, so we have a primary coil with 0 degrees of phase between it and itself. Secondary coil opposes the primary directly, so current, we're talking about 180 degrees out of phase. Okay, tertiary coil opposes the secondary coil. So the tertiary coil is 180 degrees out of phase from the secondary coil. But at the same time, the tertiary coil is in phase, directly in phase, because it's magnetically resonant, is directly in phase with your input coil. So your input coil has a coil directly linked to the secondary, which is pushing your input coil work. So the work done by the input coil is being pushed down by 0 degrees or 360 degrees, depending on how you want to look at it. So we have direct opposition between the primary and secondary. We have direct opposition between the secondary and tertiary, but we have an in-phase link directly. Okay, so what current is being carried by the tertiary coil is assisting the primary coil. Okay, so the primary coil work being done goes down as a factor of the magnetic field, or the ampere turns on the tertiary coil, and the secondary coil still carries the same current for the same amount of work done. Okay, so it's asymmetrical. If you look at the forces, the force equals 1 on your primary coil plus -1 on the secondary coil plus 1 again on the tertiary coil, which gives us 1. Whereas in a symmetrical transformer, we're looking at 1 on the primary plus -1 on the secondary, which equals 0. Okay, so what we're dealing with here is factors or units of magnemotive force, Ni, ampere turns. So the ampere turns between this coil and that coil are directly opposite and cancel each other out. So again, 1 plus -1 equals 0. Conventional transformer, all energy in the system is cancelled. Okay, it comes out as electrical energy as in the form of watts. Whereas with a asymmetrical transformer, we have a primary coil which is 1 plus the secondary coil which is -1 plus the tertiary coil which is 1. Now the negative sign represents the phase, and again the phase angle between the coils basically gives you assistive force on the primary. So the primary coil, when it's not in resonance, you'll use lots of current. When it's in resonance, the input coil current will go right down. Okay, because it's being pushed by the tertiary coil. Alright, we've had tons and tons and tons of trolls and stuff posting on the last video, so I can only guess that we're going to get lots more of that sort of activity. Please beware, everybody. Please see that activity for what it really is. I mean, if they weren't really worried about what I'm trying to show everybody, they wouldn't troll it. Okay, trolls come for a reason. Trolls come because they're trying to cover up and hide what I'm trying to share with people. It's another beautiful day. Again, I want to wish everybody well. Don't share with people you don't know. Again, I just want to remind everybody, if you don't know anyone, or if you don't know a particular person and they're trying to push you to share, don't share with them. Don't trust them. Share only with people that you know well. Share only with people that you can trust, people that are close to you. At the same time, I want to get this technology out, but I don't want to put anyone at risk to do it. Again, independent replication is key. Look at the facts, look at the evidence. What I've shared with people has been independently replicated by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people out there. Anybody that's done the work, anybody that has even done a month's worth of investigation, can see the potential of the technology. this is just the start. Like I've said before, I've got videos out there that show you how to do this. Go and see my YouTube channel. Wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, if YouTube probably shuts down the channel before too long. I've had lots of different warnings, lots of this and that and everything else, but yeah, as long as it's there, so you may as well use it. You know, I just want to urge people, there really is very little other paths other than this. If you want to power load, if you want to learn how this works, if you want to become self-sufficient, if you want to advance the technology, if you want to learn just a little bit more about electromagnetic induction, this is the only path forward. There really is nothing else, unless you're using some sort of chemical reaction. If you want a couple of coils on the bench that produce energy in excess of the input, this is the only path forward. There's other people out there that try to, you know, make big claims and all that sort of thing, but you know what? Some of the experts are the worst. Some of those so-called experts have no idea about the simple things of electromagnetic induction. Some of these people are just outright dangerous. So I urge everybody out there, think for yourselves, study for yourselves, use your gut feeling, think about what's logical, think about what's sensible, think about magnetic fields changing in time. Use your gut feeling, because your gut feeling won't steer you wrong. Very rarely will it ever steer you wrong. Just it's a beautiful day here, and look, I just want to try and help where I can. You know, I've discovered some pretty amazing tech with what I've researched over the years. I want to share it to the best of my ability. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to cover this up, so go read the comments. You know, read the comments from some people. Some people are just, they're turncoats. They're two-faced. They try and be your best friend one day, and then the very next day they're accusing you of lying, when they really have no idea. They really have no idea. So look at the facts. Look at the independent replications. If someone's sharing something and 20 people say it works, then you need to have some faith in those 20 people as well as the person that's sharing. Okay? Don't believe those people that have not done a single experiment and telling you that it doesn't work, because I've never even done an experiment. And then some of those people that have never even done an experiment, they'll tell you about someone else's experiment. But you know what? That other person that's done that experiment, who's to say that they even know what we're even doing? Okay? I've said it before in other videos, trust only AboveUnity.com members. They're the only ones that'll steer you right. Everyone else, they will lie, they will cheat, they will steal, they will try to deceive you every single day of the week. Okay? My opinion is we're in end times. Okay? I think we're at the end of an age. Age of Aquarius is coming. And those in control of the last age are trying desperately to hang on to control, and are slowly losing. It's because people are waking up. People can see it. People can see the deception. People can see the lies. People can see what these people are trying to do. But it's just moving very slowly. Anyway, everybody, be well, be safe. Look after yourself, look after your family. Research this technology. Okay, I've been sharing this for years, so I urge everybody, I'm not doing this for no reason at all. What possible reason would I have to lie to anybody? This works. Independent replications prove it. So try and move forward with the technology. You won't regret it.